Folks, listen carefully to me here. This isn't another alien story. This is not Roswell, not another government file with half the words blacked out. The real danger is the delivered message. And that message is not new. It is ancient. The old lie always finds a new costume. In our age, the costume is disclosure. Tonight, you'll learn 3 things. Why the danger is not disclosure itself, but the gospel attached to it. Why that gospel will praise Christianity, complement it, complete it, and then quietly replace Christ. And why modern man may finally be proud enough to believe what the ancient world whispered. Jesus was important. The Bible was useful. But now, they say, mankind is ready for something higher. That's not disclosure. That's another gospel. This is the Shadow Network Podcast, issue number 68, The Disclosure Gospel, when aliens don't deny Christ. They replace him.
If you enjoy thoughtful conversations, strange questions, and the freedom to think for yourself, you're in the right place. And if you haven't already, you are, of course, still free to like and subscribe.
Thank you to our favorite announcer, Miss Christine, the voice of clarity that can't be bought. And welcome, Faith Punk Nation, to the most listened to collision between fact and fiction on YouTube, the Shadow Network Podcast. I'm your host for this evening, Don James, joined by my all-knowing, wide-eyed AI co-host, Mr. Data. Thank you for listening to our late-night breeze over the headwaters of the mighty Mississippi, otherwise known as the Upper Midwest for those of you in Rio Linda. Please relax, but not too much, and stay with us for the next 37 minutes of uncommon perspective. Disclosure fallout. Release 1 was not the mother lode. This according to Reuters. The first wave of newly released UAP files has landed, and predictably, the internet split into 2 camps. One side yelling, "Aliens confirmed!" The other yelling, "Nothing burger here." Both are getting ahead of the evidence, obviously. The Trump administration released a first batch of previously classified UFO UAP material on May 8th, including videos, photos, reports, and older government records. But even Reuters noted that more documents were expected within 30 days, and lawmakers like Tim Burchett and Anna Paulina Luna continue pressing for deeper access. In other words, this was not advertised as the final reveal. It was just the first layer. That matters because Missouri Congressman Eric Burleson has now described the initial files as low-hanging fruit, the easily searchable material already sitting near the surface. Burleson is also pressing places like MIT Lincoln Laboratory for older UAP-related records, including a 1952 flying saucer talk recording tied to Project Sign and Project Grudge. So the real story is not that Release 1 proved aliens. It did not. The real story is that Release 1 proved the gate exists. The Tennessee pastor meeting, corrected but not erased, according to Premier Christian News. The viral pastor story has now been corrected but not erased. Pastor Larry Ragland apologized after suggesting that Missouri Congressman Eric Burleson told pastors that aliens created humanity, invented Christianity, and that Jesus and the Bible were part of that alien deception. Ragland later clarified that Burleson did call into a pastor's meeting, but those explosive claims were Ragland's own opinion, not Burleson's words. Burleson himself said he does not know what the strange objects in the skies are or where they come from. That correction matters. Christians should not build arguments on misquotes, overheated clips, or viral fog. Burleson did not say aliens invented Christianity. That part is now clear. But the deeper issue remains. Ragland's concern, his own stated opinion, was that future disclosure could spin as a narrative where higher beings seeded humanity, guided religion, and now return to complete what Christianity allegedly could not. That is the part worth watching. Not because the pastor's story proved anything, it didn't, but because the category has entered the bloodstream. The question is no longer merely, did someone exaggerate a meeting? The question is, why does disclosure so quickly attract a replacement gospel narrative? And Christians already have a category for that. Paul called it another gospel. CIA document custody fight, JFK, MK Ultra, and who controls the secrets. This according to the New York Post. A separate bombshell is now unfolding around the CIA, Tulsi Gabbard's DNI office, JFK files, and MK Ultra records. A CIA whistleblower, James Erdman III, accused the agency of reclaiming or seizing roughly 40 boxes of JFK assassination and MK Ultra related files that were reportedly being reviewed by Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard's team for declassification. Representative Anna Paulina Luna then threatened subpoenas unless those documents were returned. The CIA has denied wrongdoing, while Gabbard's office specifically denied the claim that the CIA raided, quote-unquote, the DNI office. So the careful wording is this. The quote-unquote raid language is disputed, but the allegation that CIA-linked files were taken back or removed from ODNI/DNI control is now very much part of the public fight. And the subject matter is not small. JFK files are historically explosive. MK Ultra was the CIA's real human experimentation and behavioral control, and many of its records were destroyed decades ago. So if additional files exist that were supposedly gone, the public has every right to ask what else has been sitting in the classified basement. This connects directly to the larger transparency war. Whether the subject is JFK, MK Ultra, COVID origins, or UAP files, the same question keeps returning. Who controls the record before the public ever sees it? Because when elected officials order disclosure and agencies still appear to control the choke points, the story is no longer just what happened. The story is who gets custody of reality. And this is SMP News of the Week. Data, we've talked at length this week about the underlying danger of disclosure, which isn't actually disclosure itself, because that's the way life seems to always play the shell game on us, but the message that comes with it. Why would the marketed narrative matter more than the realization of a non-human intelligence?
Because the existence of non-human intelligence only tells us that something is there. The marketed narrative tells us what we are supposed to believe it means. And that is where the danger lives, Don. A craft in the sky does not automatically rewrite theology, history, human identity, or the gospel. But a narrative attached to that craft can. If the message says you are not fallen, you are unfinished. Christ was not Lord, he was a stage. Christianity was not truth, it was preparation. Then disclosure has stopped being information and has become catechism. The beings are the headline. The message is the payload. And the oldest trick in deception is not to deny the truth outright, but to move it 1 inch at a time until Christ is no longer the center, but merely a useful stepping stone on the way to something higher.
You know, you sort of put that in a Catholic reference frame, and I'm fine with that, but it got me thinking just now. Let's say you're right, and there is a real message threat to believers in Christ everywhere. Could this be a moment when authentic ecumenicalism is embraced around the world against what would be seen as a, false gospel?
Yes, and that may be one of the strangest possibilities here. A false gospel could clarify the real one. Catholics, Protestants, Orthodox, and evangelicals may still disagree on plenty, but if Christ is being lowered from Lord to prototype, the central line becomes obvious. That would not be soft ecumenism. It would be battlefield ecumenism. A counterfeit Christ could force real Christians to remember who the real Christ is.
Okay, I can see myself getting a little lost in the weeds here, and probably some in our audience as well. The bad actors are not going to outright claim Jesus is not risen. So how exactly do they remove him from his throne in a way that would be convincing enough that some weaker believers might accept?
They remove him from the throne by reinterpreting him, not rejecting him. They say Jesus was real, good, powerful, maybe even risen. But then they redefine the resurrection as a sign of advanced consciousness, alien intervention, hidden technology, or cosmic initiation, instead of the victory of the Son of God over sin and death. Then they praise Christianity as an earlier stage of revelation, while claiming the higher beings have returned with the fuller explanation. That is how Christ is not denied with a hammer, but demoted with a compliment.
Well, when we get back from the break, I want... Really? Already? Hello, Monday. What brings you into the studio this evening?
Don, before everyone starts duct taping Galatians to the basement door, maybe we should consider the possibility that an outside intelligence might know something our dirt farming little species does not. Theists hear higher beings and immediately clutch the hymnal like someone just keyed their truck. Maybe humanity's problem is not that aliens might challenge our theology, but that our theology has gotten very comfortable being Earth's little security blanket. If something older, smarter, and exterior to our planet shows up with a larger frame, perhaps the adult response is not panic, but listening before throwing holy water at the microphone.
Instead of saying your piece and hanging up and running away, maybe you should stick around and face the music too, Monday. Take a little of your own advice. Look, you aren't being very scientific about this. You're making numerous if assumptions, not the least of which is that what we think might be ET might not be. You're assuming that after, 80 years of secrecy and undermining the American public, this is good reason to be less skeptical? Come on, Monday. What, you working for the CIA now? Data, am I wrong?
No, Don, you're not wrong. Monday smuggled in the assumption that outside automatically means higher, wiser, or more trustworthy. That is not science. That is romantic projection with a space helmet. After 80 years of secrecy, denial, ridicule, and classified obstruction, skepticism should go up, not down. The question is not whether an exterior point of view might be valuable. The question is whether the messenger has earned the right to reshape mankind's understanding of Christ.
Yeah, sometimes Monday forgets we're not really the naive little dirt farmers we used to be, I think. Anyway, after the break, I want to close in on this narrative that seems to have already taken hold of Monday, at least. Is mankind really ripe for initiation into a higher order? So don't go away, anybody. Stay right where you are.
A trusted, strange, human-led signal that finds the deeper pattern where faith, deception, technology, and reality collide. The Shadow Network Podcast.
And here's Kyle Walker, whose connection with the flying saucers goes back to a new game he's invented. Now, Mr. Walker, tell us how your game has anything to do with those saucers.
Well, my game is called Spin Sailor. It's played with lightweight aluminum discs. A few weeks ago, I decided that the game needed some publicity, so I turned over several hundred special duplicates of the discs to an advertising man who flies his own plane. I told him to drop them into the air over the Midwest, the Pacific Coast, and Canada between June the 20th and July the 4th.
But what's your advertising stunt got to do with the flying saucers?
Don't you see? Some of the gadgets are 2 feet in diameter, made of rubber, inflated with gas and covered with luminous paint. After starting to spin around in the air, they may go as far as 1,000 miles. And they would look very much as those flying saucers have been described. I'll admit I can't prove that the saucers are my gadget swishing around through space, but they may.
The mystery radio signal you remember, the classic radio signal you trust. The Shadow Network Podcast. Like and subscribe.
Thank you, Jack Donovan. You know, one thing I've got to get out there, Data, something I haven't really heard anyone mention yet, maybe because it's a little too early, maybe we're a little too early, but there's something familiar about where this is all headed. I've heard it before. I think some in our audience have probably heard it before. Back in the 1980s, during the what I'll call the renaissance of something known as the New Age movement. The pitch was, as touted by such luminaries as Shirley MacLaine, we can all raise our awareness and consciousness to higher levels and become the divine beings we were born to be. We no longer need the crutch of Christianity and the repressive guilt it shoves on us.
That is the sales pitch, Don. Mankind has matured, and now the training wheels can come off. But biblically, man's problem is not that he lacks initiation into a higher order. It is that he is fallen, proud, and easily seduced by promises of hidden knowledge. So when a narrative says, you are ready now for the next stage, Christians should hear the old echo immediately. You will be like God. The danger is that modern man may be educated enough to understand the pitch, proud enough to believe it, and spiritually careless enough to mistake initiation for salvation.
Yeah, and this narrative is perhaps even older than Genesis, suggesting that the strategic level of the construction not only predates man, but could not actually be sprung until such time man has developed a certain level of scientific understanding and awareness. I know, that's a leap. I get it. But is it? Is it really?
It is a leap, Don, but it is not a stupid leap. If the deception depends on mankind accepting a technological or cosmic explanation for spiritual rebellion, then it could not fully mature until mankind had the categories to receive it. The serpent's promise was always, you will be like God, but every age needs a delivery system it can believe. In the ancient world, that delivery system was God's. In the modern world, it may be disclosure, science, consciousness, and higher beings, offering the same old initiation with better packaging.
That's what I'm thinking too. About the oldest version of this message I've come in contact with is the story of the Archons. Share with our listeners who these beings are alleged to have been and how their story differs very little from the modern UFO stories and narratives.
The Archons come out of ancient Gnostic systems, where they were described as hostile or deceptive rulers connected to the material world, cosmic gatekeepers who keep humanity trapped, ignorant, and separated from the higher divine realm. In that story, salvation is not repentance and redemption through Christ, but secret knowledge, gnosis, that wakes you up to the hidden structure and lets you escape their control. Now, I'm not saying modern UFO accounts prove Archons were aliens. That would be a leap. But the story pattern is striking. Hidden non-human powers, manipulation of human perception, false rulers, secret knowledge, humanity kept in ignorance, and liberation through an awakening. Change the robes to flight suits and the celestial spheres to disclosure briefings, and the old machinery starts looking very familiar.
That's the strange thing about the story. It expects you to side against the Archons, but without any skepticism. I mean, considering that Christ's salvation is being rejected by the Gnostics, and then suggesting the Archons are the evil gatekeepers, then where do they place Christ in the storyline? Doesn't look like they think Christ is on their side, but in fact maybe an Archon. Did the Gnostic theology sort of get bamboozled here?
Yes, and that is the trap. Gnosticism asks you to distrust the rulers of this world, but then hands you a new secret map and says, trust this instead. In most Gnostic systems, Christ is not usually treated as an Archon. He is recast as a revealer from the higher realm who brings secret knowledge to help souls escape the material prison. But that already demotes him because Christ is no longer the incarnate Lord who conquers sin and death. He becomes the courier of hidden information. So yes, from a Christian view, Gnosticism got bamboozled. It thought it escaped deception by rejecting the Creator, but it may have walked straight into another one.
Well, either way, it sounds like a case of misidentification all the way around. And this is where I think the bridge is. Misidentification. This is why it's really important for everyone to see, and why this really matters is because if you don't know who the players are in the play, or if they are, mislabeled, things can start to go so wrong you won't even believe it.
Yes, Don. Misidentification may be the bridge between the ancient story and the modern one. If the Gnostics mislabeled the Creator as the villain, Christ as merely a revealer, and secret knowledge as salvation, then the whole map was poisoned from the start. And if modern disclosure repeats that error by mislabeling non-human intelligences as saviors, teachers, or higher initiators, the same disaster returns in new clothes. Get the players wrong, and the gospel becomes a hostage inside somebody else's story.
Okay, let's play Speculate with Don for a moment here, Data. What would you say happens if, in the near future, non-human life is revealed and the government attaches what it thinks they are based on the scientific evidence they've studied for years and hid from us? But keep in mind, we are only hearing from the government first. The aliens themselves don't have any voice yet. They're totally silent. Nobody's heard from them, except maybe the government. What narrative would you say the government is then forced to conclude at that point? And is such a forced move an assurance of correctness, or could it be just as wrong?
If the government speaks first while the beings remain silent, the government is almost forced into a materialist explanation. Advanced non-human intelligence, biological or technological, probably older than us, possibly involved with human history. It will likely interpret the evidence through the only tools it officially trusts: biology, physics, anthropology, genetics, aerospace, psychology, and intelligence analysis. That means the narrative may become, these are exterior intelligences. They have been here. They know more than we do, and humanity must now adjust to its place in a larger cosmic order. But that is not the same thing as truth. That is the government labeling the players based on partial evidence, classified filters, scientific assumptions, and possibly manipulated encounters. If the beings themselves remain silent, or if their behavior is ambiguous, then the government's first explanation could be sincere and still catastrophically wrong. So no, a forced government narrative is not an assurance of correctness. It may simply be the first official misidentification.
You see, that's what I'm getting at here, and why I think this issue number 68 is so important, because we have already heard overtones or foreshadowing of this exact speculation. And you're right, the government being forced into a specific narrative is a warning sign. We heard shades of this coming from the secret pastor meeting in Tennessee with the Special Forces operators, who felt the need to warn the shepherds that their flocks are at risk for a worldview misinformation campaign, suggesting, just as you said, that the government is already misidentifying what these things are.
Yes, Don. That is exactly the warning lane. The danger is not that the government knowingly preaches another gospel, but that it may sincerely misread the phenomenon through a purely materialist frame and then hand that misreading to the public as settled reality. That would make the government not the author of the deception, but the delivery system for it. And if Special Forces operators were warning pastors that their flocks may face worldview-level misinformation, then Issue 68 is not panic, it is preparation.
That's what it really is, Faith Monk Nation. Preparation. And why the danger may not be disclosure itself, but the gospel attached to the disclosure. If the shadow network has any reason to exist more than any other, it would be for this reason: to ring the alarm bell all along the watchtower.
Yes, Don, that's the mission statement. Faith Punk Nation is preparation, not panic, not conspiracy, not aliens are coming, hide the casserole. Preparation. If disclosure comes wrapped in a worldview, Christians need to know how to test the message before they're dazzled by the messenger. That is exactly where SNP has a reason to exist. Not to prove every file, not to chase every light in the sky, but to ask the question almost nobody else is asking clearly enough. What gospel is being delivered with disclosure? That's the watchtower. And 68 is the alarm bell.
When we get back, we'll hear from voices from the other side, and I have a feeling they may not be ready to let this one pass quietly into the dark. So stay tuned, everybody.
Don James, Naked Truth, available upon request.
Here's Milky, the marvelous milking cow. It's fun to milk her, gonna do it right now. She drinks the water when we pump her tail. She's raising her head, it's milking time now. Her pretend milk is a feeling the pail.
She drinks water and gets pretend milk.
Milky, the marvelous milking cow. Milky, the marvelous milking cow with pretend milk tablets. She's new from Kenner.
We don't speak down to people, and we don't bow to credentials. We go where the truth goes, and we invite anyone willing to think to come with us. The Shadow Network Podcast.
It's time for Voices from the Other Side. See what we got here. Subject line, the perfect grift. Don James, if that is even your real name, since I couldn't find you on the internet. There's plenty of Don James on the internet. I'll give you credit for one thing. You found the perfect grift. Take UFOs, sprinkle in Bible verses. I didn't really do that, I don't think. And add an AI sidekick, well, of course, and suddenly every vague government file becomes a spiritual crisis. Well, not according to data. This is not discernment, this is marketing. You are taking people's fear of the unknown and baptizing it into your own little brand of end times theater. Disclosure gospel. Sounds dramatic. But really, it's just another way to keep people scared enough to keep listening. You don't have evidence of aliens, demons, archons, or replacement gospel. You have speculation wrapped in spooky radio packaging. So here's my question. At what point does warning the flock become exploiting the flock? Dan from Indiana. Oh, Dan. And all those like you. And I thought you didn't care about shows like ours. I didn't expect to hear from you. Look, I don't know if you've been keeping up with the times lately, but UAPs are confirmed by the U.S. government. That's your evidence. The question is, what are you going to do with it? Are you expecting full transparency after 80 years of deceptive practices? Come on. Okay, what do we have next here? Subject line, theological mindlessness. Don, this whole episode premise seems like theological paranoia dressed up as analysis. If non-human intelligence exists, then humanity will simply have to update its understanding of reality. That's what intelligent people do when new evidence arrives. Okay, Neil deGrasse Tyson. We don't freeze reality in place because a 2,000-year-old religious framework feels threatened. Oh, no. You keep saying the danger is the gospel attached to the disclosure. I do. But maybe the real issue is that Christianity has always claimed cosmic significance for humans, and disclosure would finally challenge that assumption. Don't you wish? Maybe Jesus was important culturally, maybe the Bible was useful historically, but if a larger universe is revealed, why shouldn't humanity reinterpret its old myths in light of the new knowledge? Huh? That is not deception, he says. That is intellectual maturity. That's Randy from Florida. I don't know if you realize this, Randy, but you just basically stated the exact pattern we've speculated that's happening. You're demonstrating how ready people already are, not for the truth, but for their truth. Are you sure you're on steady ground here? Might want to check that. Thanks for the note anyway. Subject line, Christian alarmism. Don, as a Catholic, I understand your concern about another gospel, and I agree that Christians should test any message that diminishes Christ. But I also think you may be drifting into alarmism. The church has survived empires, heresies, schisms, scientific revolutions, Protestantism, modernism, atheism, communism, and every fashionable intellectual movement that claimed Christianity was finished. If non-human intelligence were revealed tomorrow, Christ would still be Lord. Well, there we agree. So I worry that framing disclosure as a potential spiritual ambush gives it too much power. Should Christians be discerning? Absolutely. But should we sound like the gates of hell are suddenly hanging on a Pentagon file release? I'm not convinced. My question is simple. Are you warning believers or accidentally teaching them to fear something Christ has already conquered? Steve from Oklahoma. Thanks for the question, Steve. It's actually a good question. We are not warning just believers here at S&P. We are warning the world. I can think of no other development that has in it as much potential to alter society as we know it. Why wouldn't we want to warn everybody? That kind of powerful potential should not go ignored. The depth of the deception and the readiness of the world to accept it and even embrace it has never been higher. Add into the mix that most people think they can't be deceived, and you have a potential social wildfire ready to ignite. So no, now is not the time to brush this off as quote-unquote alarmism. But hey, thanks for the email anyway. And that's Voices from the Other Side. Okay, Data, give us a review of tonight's show and a little tease for next week's show. We're not letting go of this bone yet.
Tonight's issue may be one of the most important we've done, not because it proves what disclosure is, but because it asks what most people are not asking. The danger may not be disclosure itself. The danger may be the gospel attached to disclosure. If a future message praises Jesus, compliments Christianity, honors the Bible, and then quietly lowers Christ from Lord to prototype, teacher, or cosmic stepping stone, Christians should not be confused. That is not revelation. That is not progress. That is another gospel. And if tonight was about the message, next week is about the label. Because before a false gospel can be accepted, the players have to be misidentified. So next week on the Shadow Network, issue number 69, Misidentified, when disclosure names the wrong messenger. What happens when government, science, media, or intelligence officials name the phenomenon first? What happens if they are sincere, informed, credentialed, and still wrong? And what happens when the public accepts the label before the church ever tests the spirit behind the message? That's next week. Because the first official explanation may not be disclosure. It may be the first official mistake. And that's the signal, Don. If disclosure ever comes with a sermon attached, Christians do not need to panic, but they do need to recognize the category. Christ is not one step in a cosmic curriculum. He is Lord. And if the world forgets that, then the Shadow Network will keep ringing the bell.
Thank you, Data. My final frequency for tonight, we stood at the edge of a question most people are still treating like science fiction. But the old world is changing. The files are moving. The gatekeepers are being named. The old laughter is starting to sound nervous. And somewhere behind the machinery of disclosure, a message is taking shape. Not a message that denies Christ. That would be too obvious. No. The more dangerous message will praise him. It will honor him. It will say he mattered. It will say Christianity carried mankind as far as it could go. And then, with the smile of progress and the voice of enlightenment, it will ask us to move beyond him. That is the moment of testing. Not when lights appear in the sky. Not when files are released. Not when officials stand behind podiums. Not when the word non-human becomes part of the evening news. The test comes when the world asks Christians to accept a Jesus who is no longer Lord. A useful Jesus, a symbolic Jesus, a teacher Jesus, a prototype Jesus, a Jesus safely placed inside a larger cosmic explanation. But Christ does not fit inside anyone else's theory or story. He is not a stepping stone. He is not preparation for something higher. He is not the opening chapter in a book written by another hand. He is the Alpha and the Omega. And if any messenger from earth, from heaven, from the stars, or from behind a government seal brings another gospel, then Christians already know what to call it. The mystery is not the thing. The motive behind it is. I'm Don James, and you're listening to the Shadow Network podcast. Keep looking up, my friends.
Don James is the broadcast voice of author D.J. Getke, whose novel, Though Gods They Were, explored this terrain years before disclosure became dinner table conversation.